Wait. You can just talk a little bit about what you are talking about, and then you can continue with the topic. Which case?
Okay. So basically, last time we had our, well, when Tikva had a presentation, we touched upon the subject of dynamization. I think, Tikva, you asked, Hahnemann mentioned the decillion potency in materia medica pura in arsenic, and then you wanted somebody to calculate how much arsenic is present in the decillion. So I thought, why not? I would do it. And actually, the result was quite incredible. It turns out we have, so in a decillionth potency, we have 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, like 60 zeros behind a comma. And then we have a 1, and that's how much arsenic we have. And because I went to medicine for a while, and to get into the university, we had to learn to calculate how many atoms are present in a sample. So I actually went in to calculate how much atoms we have in a decillionth potency in homeopathy. And it turns out everybody's right, we don't have any atoms. But this doesn't matter. The atoms don't matter, and Hahnemann told us that a long time ago. And this is what I will talk about today, basically. Yeah, sounds good?
Yeah.
Sounds great.
Yeah, I will also mention how we make the decillion dynamization, how it's described in the Materia Medica Pura, how it's described in the Organon 5th edition, 6th edition, how this happens, how much substance we have, what does Hahnemann say about how our substances work, and all of that. So I guess we can maybe begin now.
High
Yeah.
five.
High five, woo! Let's get into it. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I need to start the presentation now. I didn't practice this bit. Oh, here it is, the button. Okay, so we see the title. Nothing new, I've already said this. So most often we describe, when people ask us, how do we make the remedies? When we're in college, we say, we potentize remedies by dilutions and succussions. I don't know about you, but I've never thought about what this actually means. I just imagined we dilute, we shake a bit, and then we have a remedy. It works, maybe it doesn't. You know, who knows? I haven't much thought about it until I met you guys and I started to study the Organon, and I've discovered many interesting things. So let's get into it. What books we have and what do they say? So we've already mentioned the decillionth potency. It actually doesn't have to do with decimal. It has to do with a decillion, which is a different number. And Hahnemann mentions this decillionth attenuation in Materia Medica Pura. He says in the introduction for proving of arsenic that the decillionth attenuation is enough to suffice for a proper cure in cases where we need the arsenic. And I've divided this instruction of remedy preparation in 6 parts to make it a bit easier to digest. And first, he describes how to triturate the substance. So he takes 1 grain of white arsenic, which we nowadays call in modern chemistry arsenic oxide. And
Do you need to flip your screen? We're still on page 1.
Oh no, but no, that's not good, because I am.
It's okay. It's okay.
What screen
don't
are we
see
actually
me.
up to? Are we on
You don't
number
see-
3?
You don't see me switching pages now,
No,
No.
No, you're still on the first page.
but I'm not in my screen.
Okay, I
Okay, you
think we
can
need to
just
go to
click.
screen
you can-
3.
It says I'm screen sharing.
No, it's not changing here. Otherwise, you just don't turn on that show. You can just click the slides.
But I am clicking them.
Try sharing the screen again, exiting and then sharing the screen again. Maybe it will do.
Yeah, maybe. Let me
Yes,
see.
now it's changing the slides. Now it's
There
changing
we
the slides.
go. There we go.
But now it's not in full screen, but I guess that doesn't matter.
No, it's okay. We can still read it.
Yeah, okay. We already went through this. So do you see now the instructions
Okay.
in italic? Do you see them?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yep,
Okay.
got it. We're good
Oh,
now.
Okay. Whew. So basically, what Hahnemann does now, he says how to start preparing the salience potency of arsenicum album, which we call arsenic oxide in modern chemistry. So he basically describes, if I'm not mistaken, a 1-hour process in which he triturates the arsenic, which basically means he takes the mortar and the pestle, I don't know what.
Yes, mortar and pestle.
Yeah, that's the word, great. And he takes 1 grain of white arsenic and he takes 33 grains of powdered milk sugar. This is a medium substance, so it's just there like a piece of paper for color, to use it metaphorically. So he takes the grain and then he rubs it, he mixes it, right?
Yes.
For quite some time. Doesn't matter how much, for a few minutes. If you want to know the exact amount of time, you can read later on. So he mixes it, then he adds another 33 grains, he mixes it, and then he adds another 33 grains. And why he does this is because he wants to get a homogeneous mixture, which in chemistry means he wants to get a mixture that no matter what part, so if you have a mixture weighing 100 grams and you take 1 gram of it, you will always have the same amount of substance that is inside this mixture. In this case, that's arsenicum oxide. So he wants to mix it thoroughly. So when he takes in the next part 1 grain of this mixture containing 100 grains, that he always, no matter what he does, how he takes it, he always gets 1/100th part of uniformly potentized arsenic. So this is actually already 1C potency. I've actually started calculating this in grams already. So by the end, we have 6.5 grams of this mixture. And this contains, if we calculate all of this, you see the equation here. You can see, I mean, the numbers are quite clear. We have 1% of arsenic, which is the same as Hahnemann says, 1/100th of a grain. And it's uniformly potentized, so it's homogeneous. And then we go to part 2. Now he takes 1 grain of the mixture we made. This mixture contained 100 grains because we added 1 grain of arsenic and 99 grains of powdered milk sugar. So the first mixture we made has 100 grains. Of this mixture, we take 1 grain and mix it with another 99 grains. And then Hahnemann says, now we have a mixture that contains 1 part of 10,000th of a grain of arsenic. You can see here, I did a calculation. So we had 1% arsenic. This is another way to say this. It's 0.01 arsenic. Then we added more powdered milk sugar. And now we have 1 part 10,000 of a grain of arsenic. I don't know if mathematics are clear to you. I hope they are. Yeah?
Yes.
I mean, I will repeat this. It's quite repetitive, and I will repeat it in many different ways. So I think by the time we're done, you will get a very clear picture of what happens ratio-wise, mathematically, and all of that. Actually, here, wait, you cannot see it well. Yeah. So here, I've expressed this through exponents. It's a thing in mathematics. You've probably all learned about it in school. So in the first mixture, we had this number. This was the arsenic. And then when we add 99 parts, we have this amount of arsenic. So this is the pattern that starts emerging when we measure, when we count, when we sum the amount of arsenic and powdered milk sugar. So we go to part 3 of how we make the diluent. He takes of this last mixture, we take again 1 grain. And as we said, this 1 grain contains 10,000th of a grain of arsenic. And again, for 3 hours, So far we have 9 hours of making the potency. And again, with 99 grains of milk sugar, we make a 1,000,000-fold degree of potency. So again, we have the equations. One is done through grains, which is a measure Hahnemann uses. He didn't use grams for some reason. I guess it's because it's more practical. In Europe, we mostly use grains. We don't use cups and such measurements. I don't know how it is in India, but anyway. Here I made a calculation in red of how many grams we have and how much the final mixture has grams. So to express this in percentage, in this third part, we have 0.0001% arsenic. When we put this in exponents, we have 10 to the -6th potency. And this is another way of saying a 1,000,000-fold degree of potency. And this is the term Hahnemann uses. So it makes sense, I think. I've denoted this here. So now in the third part, we have a 1,000,000-fold degree of potency, Hahnemann says. In the fourth part, he takes 1 grain of this again and dissolves it in 1 drop of diluted alcohol. So because again, we're diluting it again. So 1 grain with 100 drops, again, it's 100 times more diluted. So whereas before it was a 1,000,000-fold potency, 10 to the exponent of -6. Now, when we want to know how much arsenic this mixture has, it actually has 10 to the -8 exponent because we've diluted it even further. And then again, he says, now we have a liquid solution. And if we want to reach the decillionth, it has to go through 26 vials. With each vial, you take 1 drop, add 99 drops. In the next vial, from the previous vial, you take 1 drop, dilute it with 99 drops. And this goes on and on and on. So before I've said we had how much substance of arsenic? We had 10 to the exponent of -8. This is our first vial. And then we do it 26 more times. So I don't want to repeat all of this that is written, but if you think about it and try it for yourself, it's actually very simple math. So we started with a vial that had 10 to the -8. We have 26 vials. With each vial, it gets dilute to 10 to the exponent of -2. If you, what's the word I'm looking for? Pomnožiti. Times, oh yeah. So if you do 26 times 2, you get, how much? 52, yeah. You get 52 plus 8, it's 60. So by the time we get to the 26th vial, how much parts of arsenic are present? That was the question Tikva asked me, basically, how we got to this. We get how much arsenic? By the time we get to 26th vial, it's 10 on the exponent -60. So if you want to express that in grams, it's 0,000000000000000.
60 zeros.
60 zeros, yeah, including the 0 before the comma. So you say 0, comma, and then 59 more zeros.
Or 0.59 more zeros.
Yeah, exactly. That's how you would say it
Yeah.
in proper English.
In English, I mean, in Croatian, maybe you say comma when you're making a math problem like that.
Yes,
Yes,
you do.
different countries are different.
Yeah. So basically, this is why it's called the decillionth fold degree of potentization, because apparently in British English, I went to search the word in the dictionary. The decillion is a number equal to 1 followed by 60 zeros.
That's right. Good job.
There's more.
I know, but still, good job to this point.
Yeah, thank you. It was quite fun to do. Now, for me, comes the most fun part.
Okay.
And this is how many atoms are present. So we mentioned we triturate in 3 parts. So for 3 hours, we triturate. And then we take 1 grain from the powder we've made, and we add it to, what, 100 drops of alcohol? Yeah. So how much atoms, I asked myself, are by this point, how much atoms do we have of arsenic? And it turns out we have a lot of them. To be exact, we have, I don't even know how to express this number. So 5.2 millions, zillions, billions, millions of billions. I don't know, maybe Tikva knows how to pronounce it.
5.2 times 10 to the 14th. Is that
Yeah,
what it is?
I guess that's an easy way to say it. Yeah, I cannot even imagine that number. How I came to this calculation is basically we take how many grams of arsenic we have in this mixture, and then so we have a mass, and this mass is constituted by all of the atoms of arsenic, and then we divide this number by the weight of an atom of arsenic, and that's how we get this number.
And that weight, is that calculating the mole? Is that what that's called?
Not really. If you want to know, if you really want to know, so when you look at the periodic system and you look at arsen, so every actually element in the periodic system, it has a little number. So it has a number which denotes at what what's the word I'm looking for?
Atomic
so
number.
The weight, the molecular.
Exactly, that's the weight.
It's
So
been
molecular
1,000.
weight.
It's been like how many years since I've done this math? Like a long time ago. They didn't let us use calculators, put it that way. It was not allowed to use calculators to do this
Really?
math. That's how old I am.
Damn, we were
Yeah.
allowed to use calculators. I don't think
Yeah,
I
you
could have
are
done
older
it
than
without it.
calculators.
Well, the calculators existed, but they were forbidden in school because
Why?
you had to do this all by hand. It's
I mean, I
just the
guess
way.
that's better for your brain, but come on. You know. But anyway, there are two numbers. So one number
Okay.
denotes how many electrons or protons we have in the element, and then the other one is how much more weight does this element have than an atom of hydrogen. So I've calculated that, and then I've taken the mass of substance and divided it by this number, and that's how we get the number of atoms, basically. So moving on. Oh yeah, so if we follow the files of the medicine, we come to the conclusion that by the 8th file, we only have 5 atoms, if succussed properly. Because if you don't succuss it properly, then maybe you'll have even less. Because why do we succuss? We succuss it to get an even mixture. This is why we do it, not to release, I mean, also to release a magical power, but we wouldn't be able to release this magical power if we didn't succuss it properly. Hahnemann later talks about this in Organon 6th edition, I think. Well, some aphorism will get to it. But yeah, many people are always shocked to learn this, especially the more scientific minded people, and then they, yell, "Oh no, but that means it cannot work because there are no atoms to make it work." And Hahnemann knew a long time ago, this is not what matters. This is not what makes our medicines work. It's the dynamical power. Yeah.
Mhm.
So yeah,
The magical part.
the magical, yeah, the magic, the fairy dust.
The fairy dust. Yep.
The
It's the fairy dust. Right.
Yeah, potent fairy dust. So yeah, now we leave materia medica pura, and we won't mention it again. We move on to the organon. And here is what Hahnemann says in the aphorism 269 of the 6th edition. This remarkable alteration in the properties of natural bodies is achieved through medical action on their smallest particles by trituration and succussion. While these particles are separated from one another, by means of an intervening a different substance that is either dry or liquid. So in case of crude substance, this is the powdered milk sugar. And in case of liquids, this is the mixture of alcohol and water.
Mhm.
So I was quite intrigued to find actually Hahnemann mentioning the particles, and it helped me imagine how this process comes to be. So he acknowledges the particles, but later on in chronic diseases, I think we will see that he tells us very clearly the particles are not what do the job. It's the power we release by dividing these particles. So the process of dynamization, he also describes in the 5th edition of the Organon. It's pretty much all the same. And if we do the math, here we see that the decillionth and the 30th potency is basically one and the same. Why? Because the decillionth is 10 to the exponent of minus 60, and C just denotes 100. So 2 zeros times. So 2 times 30 is the 60. So it's actually really the same. But what I found interesting, because one Indian homeopath long time ago, he instructed me to actually look at the 5th edition of the Organon because he thinks the 6th edition is corrupted for some reason. So I also have the 5th edition, and here in the footnote of aphorism 270, actually Hahnemann says that, so he basically, what's the word I'm looking for? So he kind of makes fun of the homeopaths of his time that claimed by carrying the medicinal fluid around them while visiting the patients, obviously the fluid would shake a bit, and they said, oh, it doesn't matter that that happens. And he said, oh, yes, it does matter. And I could actually make the 30th dilution, the power of the 30th dilution, by not even diluting it 30 times. I could actually do it by shaking it a lot for half an hour. So he said, oh, you fools, you know, you don't even know what you're working with. And if we want to be good and smart and amazing, in my opinion, we should know how we are making this, how this happens, what is going on. Mm-hmm. So here in the 5th edition, he basically says how to do this process in crude substances. It's the same as in Materia Medica Pura, basically. So we will move on. I've already mentioned this. How can the 30th and the decillionth be the same? It's just mathematical, doesn't matter. Moving on. So there's, in this aphorism I've just talked about, in the footnote, the editor actually added some of Hahnemann's thoughts from the chronic diseases, edition 2, part 5. And what I really loved about this is how the editor wanted us to know that what Hahnemann said about shaking the substance a lot to attain the 30th potency, actually his thought, and thank God, obviously Hahnemann thought about the art for all of his life and perfected his thinking and the method more and more. So what he says in Chronic Diseases, our master Hahnemann, about dilutions, he says that what we're working with, we cannot call homeopathic dilutions. They're not dilutions, they're dynamizations. Why? He says, if we that dilutions only pertain to what is sapid, so pertaining to taste and color. So if we dilute substances that are salty, the more we dilute them, no matter how much we succuss them, they will not get saltier. They will not.
Right.
So we need to get away from this material kind of thinking. If we take a color substance, if we just dilute it, it will get less and less in color, but this doesn't matter. And he also notes that succussion of liquid substance is nothing so it's the same thing as triturating them. So dilutions are not dynamizations. With dynamizations, we awaken the medical properties that lie dormant, as he puts it nicely, in natural bodies during their crude state. So we cannot call them dilutions, they're dynamizations.
That's right.
Yeah. And he says to potentize the preparations even higher, to quote, in order to awaken and develop still farther the medicinal properties that still lie latent in it, we must dilute them, but this is only to allow the trituration and succussion to penetrate more deeply and release the more subtle parts. So when I imagine it, it's like, okay, with succussions, you sort of, as he mentions in the 6th edition, aphorism 269, you triturate to sort of break up the particles with the medium substance. And then when you dilute and succuss, you have less particles to work with. They're further apart and you succuss them and you sort of release that dynamical power. I don't know what power it is. Maybe it's electromagnetic. Maybe it's strong atomic power. I don't know which one of the four forces in physics it is. But there are very clear, Hahnemann presents very clear reasoning why we do all of this. There's a reason why we do all of this, and we must understand how we do it in order to judge how strong our potencies are and how to adjust it to our patients, basically. Oh, and one more thing, said in a different way. So why the editor added this? Because Hahnemann said, oh, I could have just shaken it for half an hour, and without diluting it, I could have made it stronger. Yes, but the power cannot be released properly because it's a more of a concentrated substance when it's not diluted enough. And this is actually, we will see later on why he got to LMs. Because with LMs, we have more diluting right away, and they are more gentle because, how I imagine it from his writings, the power can be more released. It's not a narrow window, if that makes sense. So there are less aggravations, and because particles have more space to move, we get all of their effects, and to quote, they can hit all of the spots of the disease. Oh yeah, and the most important part, in my opinion, is the footnote of aphorism 11 of the 6th edition of the Organon, where he defines what is actually dynamic. So we all know, I hope we know, he compares the dynamic power, for example, to the moon rotating around the Earth's orbit. So this is not done by mechanical arrangements, he says. The sea tides, the ebbs, the magnets, the piece of iron being attracted to a pole of a magnet. We've all learned this in school. So this is done at a distance. They don't even need to touch. There's no little man that like takes the blocks and then he makes them get closer. No, they do this just by pure dynamic action. The same when we get sick, it's just, you know, although sometimes I wonder every time I read about the measles, you know, nowadays we know about viruses and bacteria. So I'm like, but now we know it happens by this. So is it dynamical?
Yeah. And then there's more things that are written by Hahnemann that help explain that. For example, he talks about cholera in the Ganges River being picked up and like held in the clothing and the beards and stuff like that of people and being carried from place to place. He also mentions that when somebody writes a letter in one town and they're infected with something, that it can actually infect somebody in another town through the opening of mail. So he says things about contagion. So he really kind of like sits, you know, midway between Pasteur and what's his name, Beauchamp.
I don't
So
know.
it's kind of like, you know, halfway. Hahnemann takes like a mid stance between germ theory and terrain theory.
Oh, okay.
Which makes a lot of sense because you have to have both. You have to have the germ and you have to have the terrain that's vulnerable to the germ.
Exactly. Because I mean, we've seen it with asymptomatic corona, right? So there's this tiny particle that infects you, but you won't necessarily bring on the symptoms, right? So
right, because you have to have, the body has to be prepared and in just a way to be actually sickened.
Yeah, and Hahnemann does talk about disposition as well. I haven't touched about the subject at all, but we do have.
Well, that's what I was talking about. You know, also, you know, it's kind of like midway between terrain and germ theory, because there's a little bit of both.
Yeah. And you mentioned the letter. I think also I've remembered it differently. Maybe it's a different writing, but basically, like if you open a letter with bad news and you get sick, you know, where's the germ that made you sick from the news, right?
Well, that would probably be the bad news itself.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we know that the immune system is affected by bad things, you know, bad thoughts and worries and stress. We know these things.
Yep. So he also says the dynamic power makes us disgusted by seeing something disgusting. There's no emetic in our stomach that makes us, you know, it's just the sight itself. And also with letting our arms. Yeah.
Yeah, watching people barf can help people barf.
Yep. Yep. So, what does he say next? The smallest dose of a medicine dynamized in the best matter. Oh, I love this part. He says, wherein, after committed calculation, as I have done today, only so little material can be found that its smallness cannot be thought of or grasped, even by the mathematical brain. Gives out in the appropriate disease case more curative energy by far than large doses of the same medical substance. Such great actions could never be achieved by the raw medicinal substance, even when it is taken in larger dose. So Hahnemann knew very well that the numbers are small and that there are no particles. I always get an impression like our critics think we're not aware of the fact that Hahnemann wasn't aware of the fact, but he was very well aware. He was just so, in my mind, so progressed that they couldn't even, grasp it, or they didn't want to. I don't know, but all of that talk about the particles doesn't matter that much. And yeah, so the LMs, to finish off with those, actually 2 more slides. But yeah, the LMs, the newest potency Hahnemann gave us after long experimentations are the LMs. He describes the process in the aphorism 270. LM denotes 50,000. So L in Old Roman, Latin, whatever.
Latin,
yeah, Latin, it denotes 50, and M is 1,000. So combine LM, you get 50,000. Why this is so? Because 1 grain treated for 3 hours. So to the 1 millionth attenuation, we put in 500 drops, and we take that drop and add it to 100 drops. So the result is, so 500 times 100, it's 50,000. And to get this, we give not 1,000, this is a typo, we give 100 strong succussions moistened the globules, and we get an LM. And I also did the math for this. So the first LM, so the LM1 will have 10 to the exponent of -8 parts of substance. Actually a bit less, but somewhere around that order. So this is actually more similar to like, that would be like a 3,4C. So we would consider it quite a low, not dilution, sorry. Quite a low.
Centesimal scale.
Yeah.
Centesimal scale, C.
Yeah, we would consider it a 4C. So a low dynamization. I don't want to use the word dilution because it's not. So we would consider it a low dynamization, but I think we need to get away from this line of thinking. What the dilution doesn't, so the amount of substance doesn't matter. In this case, it is not the same because we had more substance to dilute it with. We have had the 500 drops and not 100 drops. And then in the footnote of this aphorism, he says, and explains what I was trying to say right now. He says, through meticulous experiments, I was convinced that the earlier proportion of the dilution medicine and the medium, that's 1 to 100, it's too narrowly limited to develop the powers of the medicinal substance properly and to a high degree by means of a large number of succussions, unless one uses a great force. This method gives medicine that, especially in the high degrees of dynamization, almost instantaneously, but with stormy and dangerous intensity, he's talking about the C scale, impinge on patients, especially delicate ones, without bringing about an enduring, gentle counteraction of the life principles. The new method, on the other hand, gives medicine, if well chosen, of course, that curatively touches all sick points. And more is said in the footnote itself that I've just mentioned. So he basically says, if we use this scale of dilution, we will release all of the medicinal power present latently in the crude substance. And by releasing it in this way, we will bring most benefits to the patient. Actually, I feel like he's trying to say this is the only proper way to bring relief to the patient, because he does say by using the C scale, he clearly says with this method, we will get medicines that impinge on the life principle of the patient with stormy and dangerous intensity. So this is not good.
Hahnemann mentioned here that it touches all sick points. Many people believes that LM only for chronic disease, but it's a myth.
No, he actually mentions in this footnote also that actually in acute, it's great to use. It can be used at very, very short intervals, even, he says, even the long-term acting remedies such as belladonna. I don't know exactly why this is, but you can look at the footnote itself, and here he clearly mentions that it can be used in acutes very, very well.
For sure.
And if you think about it, there is no reason why it cannot be done.
Not at all. There's absolutely, it's a good all-purpose medicine.
But I'm glad
everybody should be able to make this in case something happens with the homeopathic pharmacies at some point in the future, God forbid. Everybody should be able to make an LM potency at home.
Yes, and the best part is it's very easily done. So if you have 3C, actually, if you have 3C potencies of all the remedies, you can make an LM, basically. I'm pretty sure.
Yes, you can. Yes.
And I'm glad that both of you mentioned this, because my last slide, well, there's one more, but that's just a picture, which is incredible, by the way. But Hahnemann actually also mentioned about the need to, as Tikva said, be able to self-produce our remedies, to standardize and thoroughly understand why, in some cases, the low attenuation or a high attenuation didn't work. So Hahnemann was aware, and he denotes in chronic diseases, how many, it is frequently written that some found no effect from this high dilution, and some found no effect from low dilution. And he says this needs to be investigated. So we need to understand why this happened. And he says, what prevents us, the maker of medicine, which should always be ourselves, to add more succussions to the vials? So it doesn't work. Why not succuss it more? If you know it will release more power, if you've properly chosen the remedies. So if you're conscientious and not lazy, you know, make up a prescription. How did he say, Tikva, last time you said it?
Right. Yeah, it's not for the, oh gosh, I wrote it down in a booklet. It was so good. About, it belongs to the lazy and the,
I cannot remember the word.
Yeah, I know. And I wrote it down because it's such a treat.
It's so good. It's so
know.
cheeky. I love it.
I know. It's such a hoot.
Yeah, he is. But basically he says, yeah.
Yes, okay. I can only limit myself to the latter case, chronic disease spoiled by allopathy, as the other situations cannot be arranged in tabular form for the weak and negligent, but must be left to the accuracy, the industry, and the intelligence of able men who are masters in their art. So really the art of homeopathy is really more pertains to the when to dose, how to dose, and the making of medicine than it does in creative case taking.
I didn't understand that last part.
Oh, the case taking and you know, that homeopathy is very concrete in its scientific development. And so whenever Hahnemann says the word art, I think about art as being when to dose, when to redose, how to make medicines, when to re-give those medicines, et cetera, as opposed to people nowadays are saying homeopathy is an art, because we need to be really artistic about our prescriptions, artistic about how we approach our patient, artistic about, you know, where are we going to go here in the mind and there in the mind and that kind of thing. And that's not where I think that Hahnemann intends the art to be.
No.
It is very, very concrete.
Yeah, definitely. So he basically says, like, do your own remedies, understand what you're doing, don't be weak and negligent, don't be stupid, you know, take some fucking effort and do it properly. For the sake
That's
of our,
right.
yeah, I mean, come on, you know. And the last slide, I want to show you something amazing. So basically, these are
Ooh. Oh,
droplets.
cool,
Yeah,
cool,
imagine.
cool.
So this is scientific proof that succussions do make a difference. So this was actually the second most downloaded chemistry paper in the Nature magazine of the year 2020. And what we see in these pictures and what the study attempted to do is they took, I think 6 or 5 remedies. 5 remedies.
Artesia, spongia, echinacea. What's the other one?
Loofah.
Okay.
Anyway, what they did is they had, so in total 15, I guess. What is the word I'm looking for? So I guess they had like 15 vials. So
Okay,
of each
so
remedy,
this is dark field microscopy. Okay.
yeah,
All
I have no
right.
idea what that is. I don't know what a
Oh,
dark.
oh, it's fascinating. It's fascinating. And you know, Hannah Sholom, she's a homeopath in Toronto. She does dark field microscopy when she,
Why?
and to look at people's blood to see how well their treatments are progressing, which is
Oh, that's
interesting.
amazing.
Uh-huh.
That's really like
Yeah.
Cutting edge. Yeah. Is that
Yeah,
the word?
she's doing, yeah, cutting edge.
Frontier. Yeah,
Cutting
yeah,
edge or bleeding edge, perhaps.
yeah. Yeah.
This is so
Wonderful.
cool. Okay, so you have
Yeah.
dark field microscopy. Oh, that's so much fun. What a cool picture. You have got to put this picture in the group.
Yeah, I will. So basically
Okay.
the pictures show the differences in the samples of remedies and the differences how much time they've been succussed. So it obviously affects the, I don't know what's the word to use, like the patterns of proteins or whatever. Like, I don't know. But it's very clear evidence that succussion does matter, you know, and that was kind of the point of this entire talk, like succussion matters. Dilution
Succussion
matter.
matters. Yeah.
Succussion matters, yeah.
Succussion matters.
Succussion
That's
lives matter.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Succussion lives matter. In our dark field microscopy, succussion
Yeah.
lives matter.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love this. What a beautiful presentation. Thank you, Ivona.
Thank you. You're welcome. I hope I've said something new to you or refreshed some things, said something important, and I don't know, inspired maybe. It was
Yeah,
definitely interesting for me to
you
make it.
surprised me. I was
Oh,
not expecting that you could do such a nice presentation.
oh, thanks. You had low expectations of me.
I had high expectations. On the
Oh, yeah.
contrary, I knew you were going to put together something this good.
Oh,
And I am, good job.
thank you. And thank you for
And
encouraging me, Tikva, because this was like, I've learned a lot by doing this. I like, because I'm not the type to just like read the book, you know, it has to be like interactive for me. So I'm like, oh, I have to do this. And then like to do this, I have to read this. So like, it's easier for me to digest. Otherwise, I don't like reading. So this was very fun. And I don't know, I hope one day we will all be making our remedies. It's not that hard. Turns out.
yeah.
So like
Yeah.
any questions, things you would like to discuss, comments?
I have one doubt. Shall I ask? I mean,
Yeah.
can we discuss? Dr. Hahnemann has said that dispensing as dry doses is the weakest form of dispensing it. It should be in wet doses and all. But if we give a dry dose to the patient and we wish to repeat it, then just succussing it, the dry dose, will it cause the potency to increase if there is no wetness in that rest? If I just take a bottle of pills, which is medicated by some, say, arsenic 30, and I just give a stroke, will the potency increase? I mean, of course, our pharmacy book says it doesn't, because it needs to be in a solution of alcohol.
But how else would you, wait, you would, of course you need to first make it liquid.
Yes, yes, right.
You cannot
You
take
need
a
to-
remedy bottle full of dry pills and shake it and increase the potency.
It will not increase, right?
No.
No, and that's part of the reason why Hahnemann says that when you're out and about seeing your patients, that you should
Mhm.
keep your stuff in dry pellet form. So
Exactly.
it does not increase during the movement of, let's say, your horse or the carriage.
Okay.
Yeah. The point of everything
Mhm.
for me is like we raise potency in a liquid state by shaking it, because like try to envision it like you have those particles, some kind of power, and it's just like sort of it gets more and more. You add power to it, you add the friction. With dry pills, they're too crude. They're too crude. Nothing can happen. That's why he used the mortar and the pestle. So he shook them to release, like, to do that to the particles.
Yes.
By just, if he just took arsenic and
Mhm.
he just shook it, like shook a piece of arsenic oxide, if he just like did this in the air, like nothing would happen. I think that's the same what would happen if you just took the pills and shook them in the air. So you have to make them wet. But I would suggest, I mean, I'm not even like fully practicing, but I think the point, like what we should take from this presentation and what Hahnemann said is use the LMs, use the liquids. He found it, he knows the best. He found it to be the best. At least don't use the dry dose.
Yeah, you can never repeat a dry dose twice.
No, and don't even use the dry dose. Why would you
No,
use
don't
it?
even
So
use it.
easy. It's
Yeah,
so
don't
easy to
even
make it
use it.
liquid.
Yeah, it just takes a moment.
And it's really not that hard.
Right. I haven't dry dosed for probably 15, 17 years.
That's amazing. That's very progressed.
Well, as soon as I got my hands on, the 6th edition of the Organon and some other materials, I'm like, well, yeah. Hahnemann says not to dry dose. Why are people still dry dosing?
And I'm so glad that like you've repeated it to us again and again, Tikva, because when you just read it, like you don't take it to like, yeah, but what does he know? He who invented it. Like, I know better. Everybody says dry doses are cool. I just use the dry dose. Like he knows it best. I went to college for 3 years, which is admittedly not a lot. But, and everybody said use the dry dose. And like he did it he invented it. He practiced so much for decades, like we should listen to what he says. He really knows.
He spent his life developing this method for us to use. We should take seriously what he says.
Yeah. And everybody's like, oh, no, I know better. Hi, Sharma.
Mute. Anshu, your microphone is
Yeah, you're on
mute.
mute, girl.
Yeah, I have a question. If we are giving dry doses to a patient, he's
No.
getting improved. He's getting improved. But now I feel like we should go to the like a liquid dose. So
Okay.
like the dilution. Then so we can succuss them and increase. We can turn to the dry dose to the that liquid doses, water doses. We can move.
Yeah, by all logic. I mean, I just know what I read in the Organon. I think Tikva and Sanjay can tell you better because they have more experience. But I can tell by my experience treating myself, there's a huge difference when you take a liquid dose for me.
Okay. So every time we have to succuss, like to increase the potency.
Every time you
Every
get
time.
next time you get, you succuss.
So
Yeah.
like because in the dry dose we are taking regular 200 potency repeatedly, but we are improving. But we need like now I just come to understand that water doses are more beneficial because these days everybody is going to towards the water doses. So I feel like I should move to the water doses now. So can I shift from the dry dose to the water doses?
Yes.
And how to make the water dose from like Pulsar 200 and how to make the water dose from it. Like we have the pilule, we have the globules. And how to make
We
I mean,
have
there is-
numerous videos of this on YouTube.
Yeah, guys.
Okay.
But you can put it in 10 tablespoons of water, 12 tablespoons of water, 20 tablespoons of water, a half a liter of water. You can do it in any amount of quantity of dilution that you need. That's going to be what you think is going to be best for your patient.
There are so many ways actually.
Yeah.
Well, yeah and no,
Okay.
because we always have to keep in mind by diluting and succussing, we make a higher power. But why and how? So I think we should imagine in our minds, okay, we have this remedy, it contains this energy. So how much do I have to spread it out? You're spreading it out by diluting it, and then by succussing it, you're like, I don't know the English word, like you're charging it. That's how I envision it. You're sort of charging it, So how much do you need to do this? So, I mean, but Hahnemann learned all of this by experience. And there's actually in aphorism, so in aphorism 270, he says how to get this, how to get this higher power. So he says, if you take 1/1,000,000th power attenuation, which is basically 3C, he then says how to get an LM from that. So he says, take the 1 grain, put it in 500 drops of 1 part brandy wine and 4 parts distilled water, and then take this single drop and mix it with good wine spirit.
Now,
So
if you
I think-
remember how much a grain is, remember we went over this a couple
Yeah,
of.
so a grain is, if you take the powder, I don't think people will have the powder, but yeah, if you have the powder, great. And this is 0.065 grams. So you need a good scale. But I think for the future, because what I've always hated as a student in homeopathy is everything is very up in the air. You have to be very intuitive. There are no concrete steps. And if we follow Hahnemann's instructions, there is a standardization. So in conventional medicine, there is no, just wing it. No, there is, they know exactly how much of a substance they're using. So I think we should as well. So in each case, you can say, oh, I've attained this cure and this intensity of disease by a substance, by a remedy, by a dynamization I've prepared in this way. This is why Hahnemann was able to make it so progress and to perfect it, because he knew exactly what he was doing. If we just just add a bit of water, just shake it a bit, you don't even know what you're doing. Know how much times you've shaken it. When he was talking about the Cillian's attenuation, he knew, and he says in the organon or the chronic diseases, I don't know, I shouldn't know, but I don't. He says, by my experience, I know 2 shakes are enough. No more needed. So we should be serious about that, in my opinion. I mean, I don't know nothing. I've never made a remedy, but I think we should be serious about it. So yeah, try to follow the organon. All of the instructions are here. I didn't make this presentation from my butt, I just took the books and, it all says here.
We made the remedy in a pharmacy.
Yeah.
Laboratory.
Bible. What?
We made the remedies in our pharmacy laboratory.
Exactly. And you can save so much money as well. And it's better for the patients. You can be so self-reliant.
And I have
Save a lot of money and know exactly what you're doing and have more experience. You can do provings, I think it's the way to go.
And I have a question that I know 2 ways of diluting, water dosing the remedy. There is one method when you put few globules in a glass of water. You let it dissolve and then you shake it 10 times. This will increase the potency to you have taken the 30 potency. By succussing it for the 10 times, you are increasing it to 31. Then you take that 1 spoon from that liquid, right? You're getting my point? Dissolving
I
the
think
few
Tikva can maybe reply to that better because she has more experience, but the point of everything, so why Hahnemann says C, this is his old method. So C is from 5th edition of the Organon. Why he calls it a C is because with every new dilution, he takes the original substance and does the ratio of 1 to 99.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's 100. This is why it's a C. So to get 1C, to get 2C from 1C, you just need to take something that has been raised to 100th power and mix it with additional 99 parts and triturate it well. He says exactly for how many hours and how. So there are no easy ways. I think this line of thinking would again fall for the weak and negligent. So what should I do in order to get a potency in an easy way that has the power of this? Sorry?
I'm not clear about these two. There are another method when you take 1 spoon from that solution and mix it in a half cup of water and mix it like 10 times and take 1 drop, 1 spoon from that cup. This is like 2 cup method. There is another.
Yeah. I'm not, I know, I think he mentions it in some book, but maybe Tikva and Sanjay know better. I don't.
Well, when we're making a preparation, a dilution with our LM potency, we have our dilution bottle and we take a portion of that dilution bottle, like a teaspoon, and we put it into another quantity of water. And then we take 1 spoonful as the dose from that quantity of water. And we could also do that with a C potency when needed. And the quantity of dilution depends on the effect you want it to have on the patient, because that can be done in 8 tablespoons, 10 tablespoons, 20 tablespoons. He gives various factors of what amount of water we want to dilute 1 pellet in. We're using 1 poppy seed size pellet and diluting it in a specific quantity of water. And then we are taking, depending on if we're using a C potency in water, or if we're using an LM potency, that depends on whether or not we put it into a separate cup.
Yeah. But where does he say that? Because I'm looking at aphorism 270, and he just says how to prepare the LM1 globules. But where does he say how to use those globules? It's actually a good question.
Okay. Off the top of my head. Okay, Sanjay, do you have that one on the top of your head about how did Siva Kumran. Hello, Dr. Siva Kumran. Jerry's got it.
Where, what?
He put it in the chat box.
Yeah, I see. How to use LM potencies. It's so simple.
Okay, but which aphorism is it?
Yeah, what's the reference, sir? Because anybody can say any information, but what's the reference?
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, it's as Tico said, it's correct. We have to take 1 tablespoon from the stock solution. We have to take. We have to mix with another 100 ml of water. Then we have to give 10 stirrs. Then we have to give 1 teaspoon.
And 248.
Yes, ma'am. Exactly.
It's in 248 in the foot. Okay, and it goes into the footnote as well. For this purpose, we potentize anew the medicinal solution with perhaps 8, 10, 12 succussions, from which we give the patient 1 or increasingly several teaspoon doses in long-lasting diseases daily or every 2nd day, in acute diseases every 2 to 6 hours, and in very urgent cases every hour or oftener. But when we go to the footnote, made in 40, 30, 20, 15, or 8 tablespoons of water, with the addition of some alcohol, or that piece of charcoal, the mysterious piece of charcoal, suspended. Okay, so the solution of the medicinal globule, and it is rarely necessary to use more than 1 globule of a thoroughly potentized medicine in a large quantity of water, can be obviated by making a solution in only 7 to 8 tablespoons of water. And after thorough succussions of the vial, take from it 1 tablespoon and put it in a glass of water containing about 7 to 8 spoonfuls. This stirred thoroughly and then given as a dose to the patient. Okay, that is aphorism. Okay, on my aphorism 248, it then gives me footnote 134.
So wait, Tikva, now you just read 249?
No, this is 248 with a footnote. There's a footnote on my 248 to go down to the
Oh.
bottom of the page.
Oh, yeah.
About the quantities. And then when we're dealing with a C potency, we go back to the chronic diseases for the directions in that. So this is different. This is only LM potency, and water dilution of C potency is in the chronic diseases in the end. And we do have a video on that. It was recently done. Okay. And that's where it says here that when there are patients that are so sensitive that a 3rd or 4th glass may be prepared as necessary.
Where in
Footnote.
chronic diseases does he say this?
In the back, there's
Like there are instructions for the C scale, you're saying?
yes, the instructions for C scale
Okay.
are in antisporic medicines concerning the technical part of homeopathy in the preface. And we recently had this video, if you want to watch it on a video.
Yeah. What's the name? So what the name is probably making the C liquid C potency, or?
I think that video wasn't properly named, but I would have to look, but I could easily. Some of the, Sanjay, sometimes we need to rename the videos, and I think I've asked for this a couple of times. Because
I
specific content.
rename that. Yeah.
you renamed this one?
Yeah.
Water dosing centesimal scale potencies, is that the one?
Yeah,
I mean,
that
it
would
should
be it.
be. That makes
Is it
sense.
like a month old?
3 months old.
Let's see if that's the right one. Time flies,
Yeah. It should be like, what else?
I think it's the Sunday session on dosing.
Really?
Yeah, in C potency. It's only 1 month old.
Oh, Sunday study session on dosing options in C potency. Yeah.
Yes.
Thus, the
Okay.
physician will receive a greater action
Oh, I like
from the
that one.
medicine
I don't even remember
homeopathically
watching it.
suitable to the chronic patient and can cure him more
Okay.
quickly.
Yeah, so that's the instructions in C scale with both olfaction and water dosing, because when the chronic diseases came out, we are no longer dry dosing. When we get to this book, dry dosing is over.
Okay. So basically the preface, anyway.
Preface.
Preface, yeah, preface. The
Well,
preface.
it is preface, it's before the face.
Yeah, that's how I always imagined it to be.
Well, because that's right, it's correct. But, in English, we say preface.
Preface, yeah, it sounds like that's how it should be pronounced. Anyway, in the preface, so basically Hahnemann says how to dose.
Yeah, in the preface of the very back of the book. It's after all the information that we've been going through in the group. Because in the group, we've been going through little bits and pieces, like a page a
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
we are now into the medicines chapter.
Mhm.
And then at the very end, there is the second part with how to prepare technically the medicines and how to administer them. because it is indispensable to secure a cure of serious chronic disease.
But
To
Ikva, how do
redose.
you comment with the fact that Hahnemann's latest discovery were the LM? Shouldn't we then all be focusing on the LM scale?
We should all be focusing on the LM scale, but there are people who live in places where they can't really access it. They don't know how to make it.
That's true.
I mean, to even get people to use water dosing is like trying to take apart their brain or something. It's like, that is so hard just to tell people switch to water, only use one pellet. But how many people are actually going to put their faith in that one pellet, in that 14 tablespoons of water, and then take one sip? But yet this is what we need to do, and it's sufficient. It really is sufficient.